When David returned home one morning, he couldn't believe his eyes. A notice from the HOA lay on his doorstep, claiming that his 1,500 acres of family land had been sold, without his permission. Shock turned to rage as he realized the illegal betrayal by the very people meant to protect the neighborhood. For years he had quietly tolerated their petty rules, but this crossed every line. David's mind raced. There had to be a way to turn the tables legally. As the HOA smugly celebrated their unlawful gain, they had no idea that David, a savvy legal strategist, had already begun plotting his masterstroke. What they thought was their victory would soon become the foundation of their greatest loss. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, and David was ready to serve it cold. David spent the next few days digging through contracts, deeds, and HOA bylaws, looking for every loophole. Every page he turned revealed another layer of their illegal maneuvers. The HOA board had thought they were untouchable, but they had underestimated David's determination. He hired a top real estate attorney and prepared a case so airtight that even the smallest violation could trigger a domino effect against them. Meanwhile, the HOA members were celebrating their victory, unaware that each action they took was being meticulously documented. David's evenings were spent mapping their homes, noting ownership, and gathering evidence. He wasn't acting out of petty revenge. This was a calculated legal strategy designed to hold them accountable. By the end of the week, he had enough evidence to strike, and the stage was set for the ultimate reversal. The HOA would soon learn that the hunter can quickly become the hunted. David filed the first set of legal notices against the HOA members, targeting the most egregious offenders who had celebrated the sale of his land. News of the legal action spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. HOA meetings were now tense, and their smug smiles began to fade. Each notice was precise, backed by solid evidence of violations, fraud, and mismanagement. David didn't just stop at letters. He strategically filed liens and claims on several HOA-owned properties, turning the tables in a way they never anticipated. Panic rippled through the board. What they assumed would be a quiet triumph was now a battle in the courts they couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, David remained calm, knowing the law was his weapon and patience his ally. With every move, the HOA realized that underestimating him had been their gravest mistake, and the seeds of their undoing had already been planted. The HOA wasn't going down without a fight. Furious and embarrassed, they hired their own team of lawyers and launched counterclaims, trying to intimidate David. Late-night meetings, secret strategies, and frantic phone calls filled the boardrooms as they scrambled to protect their assets. But David was always one step ahead. He had anticipated their moves and had already prepared evidence dossiers exposing each violation. Every legal maneuver the HOA attempted only strengthened David's case, revealing a network of shady deals and breaches that shocked even neutral observers. The neighborhood was buzzing with rumors. Neighbors whispered about the David who dared to take on the powerful HOA. Meanwhile, David remained methodical, calculating his next moves. He knew that the key wasn't just winning legally, it was teaching them a lesson they'd never forget. And slowly, the balance of power began to shift. With the HOA scrambling and their confidence shaken, David made his first decisive move. Using the legal leverage he had meticulously built, he targeted the most expensive HOA-owned properties, filing claims that froze their assets and prevented any sales or transfers. Panic spread through the board. They realized that the tables had turned completely. David didn't seek chaos. Every action was calculated, precise, and legal, leaving the HOA powerless to retaliate effectively. Neighbors watched in awe as David systematically exposed their corruption and mismanagement, making the once feared HOA appear vulnerable and weak. For the first time, the board members felt the weight of their own greed and the consequences of underestimating him. David's message was clear. Justice isn't about revenge, it's about balance. And now the balance had shifted irreversibly. David's strategy reached its peak. Courts reviewed his claims, and judges began ruling in his favor, freezing more HOA assets and invalidating their illegal land sale. The once powerful board members were now trapped, their arrogance replaced with fear and desperation. Each ruling was a public reminder that no one is above the law, and David's meticulous documentation left the HOA with no defense. Neighbors began to see the truth about the HOA's corruption, and whispers of admiration for David grew louder. The board tried to regroup, but every countermove was thwarted by his legal expertise and careful planning. In a final twist, David prepared to legally sell the homes of those who had betrayed him, turning their own greed into a lesson they could never forget. The stage was set for the final showdown, the moment where justice would be fully realized, and the HOA would face the consequences of their illegal actions. Finally, the courts granted David full legal authority over the disputed HOA properties. One by one, he sold the homes of the board members who had illegally profited from his land, always following the law to the letter. The neighborhood watched in stunned silence as the once feared HOA crumbled under their own misdeeds. David didn't celebrate with arrogance. He remained calm, knowing that justice had been served, not revenge. The lesson was clear. Those who abuse power will eventually face consequences. Neighbors respected David for his patience, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to fairness. His 500 acres were restored to him, and the HOA learned a bitter lesson. Greed and corruption never go unpunished. In the end, David turned a devastating betrayal into a powerful triumph, proving that knowledge, courage, and the law are stronger than arrogance and deceit.